This is the Airman Knowledge Test question bank for the Airframe Mechanic written test. Laminated wood spars may be substituted for solid rectangular wood spars if the same quality of wood is used in both. The strength of a well-designed and properly prepared wood splice joint is provided by the glue. Where is information found concerning acceptable species substitutions for wood materials used in aircraft repair? AC 4313-1B. In cases of elongated bolt holes in a wood spar or cracks in the vicinity of bolt holes, a new section of spar should be spliced in or the spar replaced entirely. A faint line running across the grain of a wood spar generally indicates compression failure. Any wood member that has been overstressed is subject to which type of failure? Compression. Dried out wood will splinter in what direction? Parallel. Which statement about wood decay is correct? Decay is not acceptable in any form or format. Which statement concerning wood decay is correct? Any form or amount of decay is not permitted. Which of the following conditions will determine acceptance of wood with mineral streaks? Careful inspection fails to reveal any decay. The I-beam wooden spar is routed to reduce weight. Pin knot clusters are permitted in wood aircraft structure provided they produce a small effect on grain deviation. The cantilever wing uses no external bracing. Laminated wood sometimes used in the construction of highly stressed aircraft components. This wood can be identified by its parallel grain construction. When patching a plywood skin, abrupt changes in the cross-sectional areas which will develop dangerous stress concentration should be avoided by using circular or elliptical patches. Glue deterioration in wood aircraft structure is indicated when a joint has separated and the glue surface shows only the imprint of the wood with no wood fibers clinging to the glue. Compression failures in wood aircraft structures are characterized by the buckling of fibers that appear as streaks on the surface at right angles to the grain. When and how is finishing tape applied on a fabric-covered aircraft? Doped on after the first or second coat of dope. The determining factors for the selection of the correct weight of textile fabric to be used in covering any type of aircraft is the speed of the aircraft and the maximum wing loading. How many fabric thicknesses will be found in a French fell seam? 4. Finishing tape or surface tape is used for what purpose? To provide additional wear resistance over the edges of fabric forming structures. Moisture, mildew, chemicals, and acids have no effect on glass fabric. Fungicide and mildew additives are important for fabric-covered aircraft such as cotton and linen. The best method of repair for a fabric-covered surface which has an L-shaped tear, each leg of which is approximately 14 inches long, is to sew with a baseball stitch from the center of the tear out toward the extremity of each leg and then dope on a patch. The replacement of fabric on fabric-covered parts such as wings, fuselages, stabilizers, or control surfaces is considered to be a major repair even though no other alteration or repair is performed. The stress classification of fabrics used in aircraft covering is based on tensile strength. Fabric rejuvenator is used to restore the condition of dope coatings. Machine sewn seams in aircraft covering fabrics may be which of the following types? Folded fell, French fell, or plain lapped. When testing the strength of grade A cotton fabric covering an aircraft that requires only intermediate grade, the minimum acceptable strength the fabric must have is 70% of the original strength for intermediate fabric. When dope proofing the parts of the aircraft structure that come in contact with doped fabric, which of the following provide an example of protective coating? Aluminum foil and cellulose tape. If registration numbers are to be applied to an aircraft with a letter height of 12 inches, what is the minimum space required for the registration of N1683 Charlie? And there's a description, and the answer is 52 inches. If masking tape is applied to an aircraft such as for trim spraying and is left on for several days and or exposed to heat, it is likely that the tape will cure to the finish and be very difficult to remove. What is used to slow the drying time of some finishes to prevent blush? Retarder. Which type of coating typically includes phosphoric acid as one of its components at the time of application? Wash primer. Which properly applied finish top coat is the most durable and chemical resistant? Polyurethane. Aluminum pigment in dope is primarily used to reflect ultraviolet from the fabric. Could say sunlight. A correct use for acetone is to remove grease from fabric. Which of the following is a hazard associated with sanding on fabric-covered surfaces during the finishing process? Static electricity buildup. When the humidity is low, what is likely to occur if unhydrated wash primer is applied to unpainted aluminum and then about 30 to 40 minutes later a finished top coat is applied? Corrosion. Fungicidal dopes are used in aircraft finishing as the first coat to prevent fabric rotting and are applied extremely thin to saturate the fabric. Before spraying any finishing materials on unpainted clean aluminum, avoid touching the surface with bare hands. When the humidity is low, what is likely to occur if hydrated wash primer is applied to unpainted aluminum and then about 30 to 40 minutes later a finished top coat is applied? Corrosion. Fungicidal dopes are used in aircraft finishing as the first coat to prevent fabric rotting and are applied extremely thin to saturate the fabric. Before spraying any finishing materials on unpainted clean aluminum, avoid touching the surface with bare hands. When the humidity is low, what is likely to occur if hydrated wash primer is applied to unpainted aluminum and then about 30 to 40 minutes later a finished top coat is applied? A glossy, blush-free finish. What is the usual cause of runs and sags in aircraft finishes? Too much material applied in one coat. Which defect in aircraft finishes may be caused by adverse humidity, drafts, or sudden changes in temperature? Blushing. What causes paint sags or runs? Paint spray nozzle to open. Which statement is true regarding paint system compatibility? Old wash primer coats may be overcoated directly with epoxy finishes. A well-designed rivet joint will subject the rivets to shear loads. A main difference between lock bolt / huck bolt tension and shear fasteners, other than their application, is the number of locking collar grooves. Alloy 2117 rivets are heat treated by the manufacturer and do not require heat treatment before being driven. The general rule for finding a proper rivet diameter is 3 times the thickest sheet. The shop head of a rivet should be 1.5 times the diameter of the rivet shank. One of the main advantages of high lock type fasteners over earlier generations is that they can be installed with ordinary hand tools. Which of the following is one advantage of high lock fasteners? Inability to be over torqued. The markings on the head of a Zeus fastener identify the body, diameter, type of head, and length of the fastener. Zeus turn-lock fastener consists of a stud, grommet, and receptacle. The stud length is measured in hundredths of an inch. The Zeus turn-lock fastener consists of a stud, grommet, and receptacle. The stud diameter is measured in 1/16 of an inch. Threaded rivets, rivnuts, are commonly used to attach parts or components with screws to sheet metal. The installation of Cherry Max and Olympic lock rivets is accomplished by utilizing a pulling tool. Hole-filling fasteners, for example, MS 2470 rivets, should not be used in composite structures primarily because of the possibility of causing delamination. Metal fasteners used with carbon/graphite composite structures must be constructed of a material such as titanium or corrosion-resistant steel. Sandwich panels made of metal honeycomb construction are used on aircraft because this type construction saves weight while not compromising strength. When performing a ring coin tap test on composite structures, a change in sound may be due to damage or transition to a different internal structure. The extent of separation damage in composite structures is most accurately measured by a ring coin tap test. Regarding the two above statements, only number one is true. Which of these methods may be used to inspect fiberglass honeycomb structures for entrapped water? X-ray and backlighting. When balsa wood is used to replace a damaged honeycomb core, the plug should be cut so that the grain is perpendicular to the skin. When preparing a wood surface for bonding, what should not be used? Sandpaper. When repairing puncture-type damage to a metal-faced laminated honeycomb panel, the edges of the doubler should be tapered to 100 times the thickness of the metal. One of the best ways to assure that a properly prepared batch of matrix resin has been achieved is to have mixed enough for a test sample. How does acoustic emission testing detect defects in composite materials? By picking up the noise of any deterioration that may be present. When conducting a tap test on a composite panel, which of the following sounds would indicate delamination? Dull thud. What precaution, if any, should be taken to prevent corrosion inside a repaired metal honeycomb structure? Prime the repair with a corrosion inhibitor and seal from the atmosphere. Seal from the atmosphere. One method of inspecting a laminated fiberglass structure that has been subjected to damage is to strip the damaged area of all paint and shine a strong light through the structure. When inspecting a composite panel using the ring test/tapping method, a dull thud may indicate separation of the laminates. Which of the following are benefits of using microballoons when making repairs to laminated honeycomb panels? Improved strength to weight ratio, less density, and lower stress concentrations. The length of time that a catalyzed resin will remain in a workable state is called the pot life. A category of plastic material that is capable of softening or flowing when reheated is described as a thermoplastic. The classification for high tensile strength fiberglass used in an aircraft structure is S-glass, which is an identifying characteristic of acrylic plastics. Zinc chloride will have no effect. Superficial scars, scratches, surface abrasion, or grain erosion on fiberglass laminates can generally be repaired by applying one or more coats of suitable resin, room temperature catalyzed, to the surface. The classification for fiberglass reinforcement material that has high resistivity and is the most common is E-glass. E for everywhere. A potted compound repair on honeycomb can be usually made on damages less than 1 inch in diameter. Composite fabric material is considered to be the strongest in what direction? Warp. What reference tool is used to determine how the fiber is to be oriented for a particular ply of fabric? Warp clock or compass. Warp clock. The strength and stiffness of a properly constructed composite buildup depends primarily on the orientation of the plies to the load direction. Which fiber to resin percent ratio for advanced composite wet layups is generally considered the best for strength? 60-40. What is the material layer used within the vacuum bag pressure system to absorb excess resin during curing called? Bleeder. Proper pre-preg composite layup curing is generally accomplished by applying external heat and pressure. When repairing large flat surfaces with polyester resins, warping of the surface is likely to occur. One method of reducing the amount of warpage is to use short strips of fiberglass in the bonded repair. When making repairs to fiberglass, cleaning of the area to be repaired is essential for a good bond. The final cleaning should be made using MEK, methyl ethyl ketone. When necessary, what type of cutting fluid is usually acceptable for machining composite laminates? Water only. Fiberglass laminate damage not exceeding the first layer or ply can be repaired by filling with a putty consisting of a composite resin and clean short glass fibers. Fiberglass damage that extends completely through a laminated sandwich structure may be repaired. Fiberglass laminate damage that extends completely through one facing into the core requires the replacement of the damaged core and facing. Repairing advanced composites using materials and techniques traditionally used for fiberglass repairs is likely to result in an unairworthy repair. The preferred way to make permanent repairs on composites is by laminating on new repair plies. Which of the following, when added to wet resins, provides strength for the repair of damaged fastener holes in composite panels? Flocks and chopped fibers. The part of a replacement honeycomb core that must line up with the adjacent original is the ribbon direction. Which of the following are generally characteristic of aramid fiber Kevlar composites? High tensile strength and flexibility. Which of the following are generally characteristic of carbon graphite fiber composites? Stiffness, high compressive strength, and corrosive effect in contact with aluminum. If an aircraft's transparent plastic enclosures exhibit fine cracks which may extend in a network over or under the surface or through the plastic is said to be crazing. When installing transparent plastic enclosures which are retained by bolts extending through the plastic material and self-locking nuts, the nuts should be Tightened to a firm fit, then backed off one full turn. If a new safety belt is to be installed in an aircraft, the belt must conform to the strength requirements in which document? TSO C-22. Which is considered good practice concerning the installation of acrylic plastics? A. When nuts and bolts are used, the plastic should be installed hot and tightened to a firm fit before the plastic cools. B. When rivets are used, adequate spacer or other satisfactory means to prevent excessive tightening of the frame to the plastic should be provided. C. When rivets or nuts and bolts are used, slotted holes are not recommended. The answer is B. The coefficient of expansion of most plastic enclosure materials is greater than both steel and aluminum. If no scratches are visible after transparent plastic enclosure materials have been cleaned, their surfaces should be covered with a thin coat of wax. Cabin upholstery materials installed in current standard category airplanes must be at least flame resistant. Which regulation provides the airworthiness standards for an aircraft certified in the normal category? 14 CFR Part 23. What is the most common method of cementing transparent plastics? Soak method. What type of bit should be used to drill holes in plexiglass? A specially modified twist drill. Which of the following drill bit types work best when drilling an aramid fiber Kevlar composite laminate? Carbide with W point. Which of the following drill bit types work best when drilling an aramid fiber Kevlar composite laminate? Tapered carbide point. Which of the following drill bit types work best when drilling an aramid fiber Kevlar composite laminate? Kydex. Which of the following drill bit types work best when drilling an aramid fiber Kevlar composite laminate? Clink type. So for every aramid composite question, the answers will be carbide W point, tapered carbide point, Kydex, clink type. What is the purpose of a gusset or gusset plate used in the construction and repair of aircraft structures? To join and reinforce intersecting structural members. Select the alternative method which best describes the function of the flute section of a twist drill. Forms the cutting edges of the drill point. How many MS 2470 AD-4-6 rivets will be required to attach a 10-inch by 5-inch plate using a single row of rivets, minimum edge distance, and 4D spacing? 56. On a semi-monocoque fuselage, the skin is reinforced by longitudinal structural members called longerons, and stringers. Shallow scratches in sheet metal may be repaired by burnishing. Which maintenance action is an airframe major repair? A. Rewinding the fueled coil of an electrical accessory. B. Changes to the wing or fixed the movable control surfaces which affect flutter and vibration characteristics. C. The repair of portions of skin sheets by making additional seams. The answer is C. The repair of portions of skin sheets by making additional seams. What should be the included angle of a twist drill for soft metals? 90 degrees. When comparing the machining techniques for stainless steel sheet material to those of aluminum alloy sheet, it is normally considered good practice to drill the stainless steel at a lower speed with more pressure applied to the drill. Single lap splice is to be used to repair a section of damaged aluminum skin. If a double row of 1/8 inch rivets is used, the minimum allowable overlap will be 13/16 of an inch. What is the minimum edge distance allowed for aluminum alloy single lap sheet splices containing a single row of rivets as compared to join with multiple rows, all rivets being equal in diameter? The minimum edge distance for the single row is equal to that of the multiple row. Which statement is true regarding the inspection of a stressed skin metal wing assembly known to have been critically loaded? If genuine rivet tipping has occurred, groups of consecutive rivet heads will be tipped in the same direction. What is the minimum edge distance for aircraft rivets? 2 times the diameter of the rivet shank. When drilling stainless steel, the drill used should have an included angle of 140 degrees and turn at a low speed. Could be 135. What is the minimum spacing for a single row of aircraft rivets? 3 times the diameter of the rivet shank. Referring to Figure 1, which of the rivets shown will accurately fit the conical depression made by a 100-degree countersink? 1. Which is correct concerning the use of a file? Apply pressure on the forward stroke only, except when filing very soft metals such as lead or aluminum. Which is correct concerning the use of a file? Draw filing is used for smoothing and squaring of large surfaces. What is one of the determining factors which permits machine countersinking, flush riveting? Thickness of the material is greater than the thickness of the rivet head. What is one of the determining factors that requires the use of dimpling instead of countersinking? Thickness of the material is less than the thickness of the rivet head. When repairing a small hole on a metal stressed skin, the major consideration in the design of the patch should be the shear strength of the riveted joint. Which procedure is correct when using a reamer to finish a drilled hole to the correct size? Turn the reamer only in the cutting direction. Repairs or splices involving stringers on the lower surface of stressed skin metal wings are usually permitted but are not normally more critical in reference to strength and tension than smaller repairs to the upper surface. When straightening members made of 2024 T4, you should straighten cold and reinforce. Clad aluminum alloys are used in aircraft because they have corrosion layers of pure aluminum or aluminum alloy bonded to the core material to inhibit corrosion. Which statement is true regarding a cantilever wing? No external bracing is needed. Aircraft structural units such as spars, engine supports, etc., which have been built from sheet metal, are normally repairable using approved methods. A factor which determines the minimum space between rivets is diameter of the rivets being used. What should be the included angle of a twist drill for hard metal? 118 degrees. When fabricating parts from all-clad 2024 T3 aluminum sheet stock, must have all scratches, kinks, tool marks, nicks, etc. held to a minimum. Monocoque fuselages relies largely on the strength of skin or covering. Which parts of semi-monocoque fuselages prevent tension and compression from binding the fuselage? Longerons and stringers. Rivet gauge or transverse pitch is the distance between the centers of rivets in adjacent rows. Rivet pitch is the distance between the centers of adjacent rivets in the same row. Referring to Figure 2, select the preferred drawing for the proper countersinking. 1. What is indicated by a black, smoky residue streaming back from some of the rivets on an aircraft? Fretting corrosion is occurring between the rivets and the skin. The identifying marks on the heads of aluminum alloy rivets indicate the specific alloy used in the manufacture of the rivets. When an MS-2470D rivet is installed, its full shear strength is obtained only after a period of age hardening. Which of the following need not be considered when determining minimum rivet spacing? Rivet length. Rivets can be stored below 32 degrees for how long after heat treatment to retard hardening? 24 hours. Under certain conditions, Type A rivets are not used because of their low strength characteristics. Aircraft bolts that are raised or have an asterisk are what type? Standard steel. A rivet set used to drive MS-2470 rivets should have a slightly greater radius than the rivet head. Heat-treated rivets in the D and double D series that are not driven with the prescribed time after heat treatment or removal from refrigeration must be reheat treated before use. The dimensions of MS 2430 AD 4-8 rivets are 1/8 inch in diameter and 1/2 inch long. The primary alloying agent of 2024 T36 is indicated by the number 2. Which part of 2017 T36 aluminum alloy indicates the temper designation? T36. Which part of 2024 T3 aluminum alloy indicates the temper designation? T3. Which part of the 2017 T36 aluminum alloy designation indicates the primary alloying agent used in its manufacture? 2. A sheet metal repair is to be made using 2 pieces of 0.040 inch aluminum riveted together. All rivet holes are drilled for 3/32 inch rivets. The length of the rivets to be used will be 1/4 inch. Most rivets used in aircraft construction have dimples. MS 2042-6 AD-6-5 indicates a countersunk rivet which has an overall length of 5/16 inch. Which rivet may be used as received without further treatment? 2117 T3. Referring to figure 3, what is the grip length of the flush rivet? 3. Which rivets should be selected to join 2 sheets of 0.032 inch aluminum? MS 2470 AD-4-4. A sheet metal repair is to be made using 2 pieces of 0.0625 inch aluminum riveted together. All rivet holes are drilled for 1/8 inch rivets. The length of the rivets to be used will be 5/16 inch. Mild steel rivets are used for riveting steel parts. A double D rivet is heat treated before use to soften to facilitate riveting. Nice. When riveting dissimilar metals together, what precautions must be taken to prevent an electrolytic action? Place a protective separator between areas of potential electrical difference. The length of a rivet to be used to join a sheet of 0.032 inch and 0.064 inch aluminum alloy should be equal to 1.5 times the rivet diameter plus 0.096 inch.